Aleichem and welcome to Online Smicha. Today we'll discuss the halacha on this week's Parsha, Parshat Vayeira. We know what Chazal tell us, that to greet guests and make them feel comfortable is even greater than Kabbalas Pnei Ashchina. We learned that from Avram Avinu, that as he's talking to Hashem, he sees the people, the strangers walking by, and he asks Hashem to hold on because he wants to greet the guests and feed them and so on. And the schar of the mitzvah of Hachnasas Orchim is known. The Rebbe brings in a letter that he heard from the Frierdiker Rebbe, a pshat and the pasuk, Bameh Yizaker Nar Es Orchai, that Es Orchai, Hachnasas Orchim, is actually a zchus, a segula, to Yizaker Nar, to have children. The Balaturim on the pasuk Ve'al Bakar Ratz Avram, that Avram ran to help the guest and make the food himself. So the Balaturim says there are three tagim, there are three lines in the Sefer Torah on top of the kuf of the word Bakar. Why? Says the Balaturim, because B'schar Zeh, for this act of him personally going and doing things for Achnasas Orchim, Zacha Avram Leben Ben Kuf. Avram, at the age of 100, had the schus, the merit, to have a child. So that's why there is the tagim on top of the letter Kuf. But yet, when you look at the Achnasas Orchim, it's specifically attributed to Avram Avinu. The Rambam says in Hilchas Avil, Perek Yudaleh, when he lists off all the mitzvahs begufay, that are under the umbrella of Ahavta l'reacha kamocha, Hachnasas Orchim, Bikur Chaylim, Nichum Avelim, he says that Hu Achoik Shechakakoi Avram Avinu. This is something that specifically Avram Avinu taught us. The life and spirit of this mitzvah is something that we see more by Avram than anybody else. And Avram's lifestyle, how to do this chesed, affected people around him. As later on in the same parsha we find Lot doing acts of Achnasas Orchim, and Rashi says, the Mefarshim say, how does Lot have this enthusiasm to fulfill this mitzvah? Because it was a trickle-down effect of what he got from Avram Avinu. So we see that the spirit of Achnasas Orchim by Avram Avinu was excellent, in a very high way. And here is what the pasuk says. The pasuk says, first of all, that Avram Avinu was Yoshev Pesach Ha'oil K'choyim Hayoim. And Rashi says, Avram Avinu was sitting there waiting, hoping to fulfill the mitzvah. Kvayochel, like it says about the Eibishter, that he doesn't only do good, but he's chafetz chesed. The Eibishter tries to find ways how to do good. Vayisa Einav Vayar Vayoratz L'krasam. Avram Avinu ran towards them. He was so excited to see guests. And the pasuk lists off all the different food items that he gave them and how he requests them to come into his house. The pasuk says, Yukach na mayim, please take some water. Rachzu raglechem, wash your feet. Hishanu tachas eitz. And we all know what Rashi says, that at one point Avram Avinu suspected them of being those who worship Avak Shabbat, so he wanted them, before they walk into his house, to wash off his feet, wash the Avodah Zarah off the feet, whereas by Lot, later on, he didn't care about that, so he didn't offer them to wash their feet before the guest walked into his house. The Klei Yakar has a problem with this pshat, and he says, if so, there are so many other forms of Avodah Zarah that Avram Avinu should have been concerned with. So perhaps he learned pshat. The reason he asked them to wash their feet is pashut. It's a form like a mikveh. He was hichziram b'tshuva, coming into his house. The washing of their feet was a symbol of hachzara b'tshuva. Then it says ve'ekcha pas lechem, I will give you bread. You have a good meal. And vayimar, he quickly went. He told Sarah what to do. And the Gemara tells us the Isha Inat, Sarah Ba'archim, even though Avram was more giving, Sarah didn't do exactly the way he described what should be fed. The El Bakar Ratz Avraham. Avraham personally, he was not a young man. And it was now in the time of, he was suffering right after the Bris Milah. Avraham personally, stresses the Ramban, went and ran to the Bakar, did what he had to do to prepare the meal. Vayikach, and he brought Chema, Chalav, Ben Abakar, milchiks, fleishiks, and we all know the Shaila, how was he able to feed the Malachim, Chalav, and Chema, and Basar, and there's many ways how to answer that. And then the Pasuk continues, Vayoichlu, and the Malachim, the Archim, the guest, ate, and the Rashi says, Niru Kamay Shachlu. It appeared like they ate after all they were Malachim, because it's a lesson that we have to learn, Shalai Yishana Adam Min Aminig. What you do, what's customary to be done. You're a guest, be a mensch, and eat. And that's why the Malachim Niru Kamay Shachlu. This is the form of Achnasas Archim that we find by Avram. Later on in the same Parsha, Kapitel Yutes, we find Achnasas Archim of Loit. It says, Vayavayu Shnei Malachim, Vayar Loit. Doesn't say Vayaratz L'krasam. He ran to get them. Yeah, Vayakam L'krasam. He stands up to greet them. And Rashi says that even this, how does a Loit have that feeling? Because he is, after all, his relative is Avram. He learned the concept of Achnasas Archim from Avram. And as I mentioned before, first he tells them Velinu, rest up, go to take a nap, and then V'rachzu Raglechem. Now Rashi says over there that he specifically asked them to rest up. He didn't care about the dirt in the feet because he wanted it to look as if they just came. In case any strangers walk by and say, why are you doing Achnasas Archim? So if they're still dirty, it looks like they just came. But the other Mefarshim say that what was a problem by Avram Avinu, inviting strangers who have Avodah Zarah into his house, was not a problem by Lot. Vayas lehem mishta umatzais afa vayoichelu. So the Ohr HaChaim HaKadosh says that Vayas lehem mishta. He actually, Lot produced and made a nice feast. Mishta. Umatzais afa vayoichelu, they only ate the matzah, says the Ohr HaChaim HaKadosh, because Lot wasn't that frum. The Malachim knew that. So to sit down and have a party with him, Mishta, they didn't feel comfortable. But the matzah is afa, he brings one opinion says it was Pesach, it's matzah, and they actually watched the baking of the matzah. For that, they felt comfortable enough to eat, and they had their meal there, the matzahs that he provided. Now the Rebbe is medayik a tremendous halacha, that when the Rambam says the importance of Achnasas Archim, it's not so much the type of food that you give him, or the dishes, or how much you give. The Rambam keeps on stressing, more than the food, the schar halaviyah, the reward of greeting the guest. Meruba min hakol. It's better than any other part of the mitzvahs that he describes earlier. As he brings Avraham Avinu as a proof, the Maichel Ivrei Dachim, Umashka Oisam, Umalava Oisam. And the Rebbe says that even though Chazal tell us, and the Rambam himself says, that Kol She'ena Malava, Ki'ilu Shoifech Damim, if you don't greet your guest, you greet them out of the door, show them on the right path, it's as if you are Rachmana Litzlan Shoifech Dam. Simply pshat is because they might be lost and go on the wrong derech, the wrong path, and go into a dangerous place. But the Rebbe says, no, shoifech dam over here could even mean that when you don't not malava oirech, you show they're not important to you. If they're not important to you, it's just a change. They lose their cheshivas within themselves. And that's why that is perhaps a point that you learn from Avram, that you don't find anywhere else, that besides the feeding of the food, there's an inyan of showing concern, showing a geschmack in helping the person. And not only showing a geschmack, but showing him how important he is, that he was vayaratz l'krasam, and he was malava him. That's something that every yid should learn from Avram Avinu, and the schar gadol me'od. Yasher koyach, and please join us again next week.